Hey everybody, we are hopefully live, and we're just waiting for a second to make sure that the stream is working. Hi everybody, I am Michael Munson. I am glad that you're all joining us. I'm here today with Caleb and Christina, and we are going to have a fun conversation about there's like not a right way to do Pride. So we're going to have a conversational style discussion about kind of the what Pride means to us in terms of like some of the non-formal or the non-traditional ways, but we may wander around and find some other topics that feel good to us. But the theme is supposed to be there's no right way to do Pride. So Caleb and Christina, do you want to just introduce yourself and then maybe one of you can start us off?
Sure. I'm Caleb. I use he, him pronouns. I'm Forge's communications coordinator. So I'm behind a lot of the social media stuff, and now I get to be more directly talking with people. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, and I'll let Chris share and then throw in some ideas.
Hi, I'm Christina. I am a social media content creator here at Forge, among some other things, but that's my primary that's my primary job. So you'll see me all over the social medias and stuff, sharing a lot of the resources and things we have here at Forge. And yeah,
if you're, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to plug you.
Fine.
So if you're watching on Instagram Live, we're going to cross post this to TikTok, and that's where you'll see a lot of Christina. So go there to TikTok or stay here, and we're trying to cross post at least for a while so that everybody can see from their favorite platforms. Okay, I'm done interrupting you, Christina.
Oh no, thank you.
Do you want to start us?
You know what? I will let somebody else start if that's okay.
Yeah, totally.
Caleb, I'm going to breathe my way into this morning if that's okay.
We're just going to kind of slide in, and as people join us, we're all going to slide in. So,
sure.
Caleb, do you want to start about anything?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the past live streams have been kind of more focused on what Pride means to folks, and so I wanted to just reflect on like in the past how I've really sometimes enjoyed the kind of festival feel of like going to Pride events, being in person with folks, and that kind of sense of community and like sometimes safety. It was a little bit, it depended a lot on the situation, but that's changed a lot for me in recent years for several reasons. And part of that has to do with the COVID pandemic and kind of the risks of being in a place like that, even outdoors where there's just so many people together, which has been a difficult shift. And then also just my body not doing as well in the heat and, in places where I can't sit down and those kinds of more strenuous situations. So it's been kind of a transition and something that's been on my mind a lot about how to celebrate and how to like find what's important to me about Pride Month when certain activities that used to be really fun don't really feel fun or accessible or maybe as meaningful to me at this point.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Chris, are you warmed up?
I'm warmed up a little bit, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, for me, I love celebrating Pride in a lot of different ways, but for me, Pride definitely took a shift after the Pulse nightclub shooting. I took 6 years away from all LGBT events, period, because it really triggered some trauma in me, and I'm still finding my way back. The past couple of years, I've been re-engaging with Pride and learning what that looks like for me, because it's not what it looked like 8 years ago. It can't be what it looked like 8 years ago because we have new sets of concerns and there's the pandemic. And yeah, all of these play into how we celebrate these days. A lot of my pride comes from this room right here where I produce content.
And so, I mean, those are a couple of reasons, right? And as an anti-violence organization, I think that we tend to think about things like safety around Pride and stuff. And so that might be one of the reasons that people choose to not go to Pride or choose to go to Pride differently. COVID was another one. So like we've got several different things that may lead people to say, I don't really want to go to that big public event. So what do we do instead? Do we do other things? Not each of us personally, but what can people do instead of going to the big place where there's a lot of people and a lot of hoopla? I mean, I can start us, which is I don't have to do anything, right?
Right.
For me, it's something as simple as just wearing a t-shirt out in my community, sending a signal to my other small town trans folks. I mean, this one here that I'm wearing says, "This is what trans looks like." And I'm going to be running some errands later wearing that. And hopefully getting some positive feedback amongst the not so happy faces that I'm bound to see. But simple things like that, showing solidarity.
Yeah, I love that too. I was just thinking about I've got my Forge hat that I love that says Trans Joy. And I wear it a lot of the year without really thinking about it, but I think it makes me more aware of it, that I don't know, that's a choice to kind of be visible in public when I don't necessarily always do that. And I think that's true for a lot of people around like Pride. Are we like presenting ourselves in a different way than usual that feels affirming? And yeah, like Christina was saying, with that solidarity of kind of showing up in our communities as visibly trans people or visibly queer people, and hopefully somebody else seeing that and, I don't know, having a moment of reflection, or maybe feeling more comfortable, or feeling that they can do that for themselves.
Yeah. I love that.
So we're going to keep on talking over each other. I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause before I say anything now.
Me too. No, I love that, because I always think about how I feel when I see a fellow LGBT person wearing Pride merch, whether it's earrings or a t-shirt or a bracelet, and how we get to have our own little Pride celebration right there when we recognize each other out in public.
Yeah. What I was going to mention before I cut you off was that, Christina, you mentioned, that you live in a more rural community, and it's like, I think it's really different about how we do Pride when we're in a rural community, because we might have different safety concerns. It might be just fun to like say, I'm going to be out, and that. So do you have anything more you want to share about that? Because I know, like, you shared some stuff with us. I don't know if you want to share it more publicly about some of how you navigate those rural waters.
Oh, I do. It's not easy being visibly trans in a rural area. I am 6 feet tall. I did not get puberty blockers, so my body is not, what I often wish it was. And I sometimes stick out like a sore thumb because I am a gardener and I am constantly running to the garden center covered in dirt. So, I mean, I get some looks out here. But then I think about how being visible, celebrating our pride, being bold is a way to remind folks, not just fellow LGBT people, but, the general public at large, that we're still going to celebrate ourselves. We're still here. We're not hurting anybody. I get just as covered in mud as you do. And a good reminder of that actually is that I've got pride flags hanging in my windows of my house. I don't get a lot of drive-by traffic, but the drive-by traffic I do get, I want them to see, because, there's a lot of not so nice people in my neighborhood. And I think it's important to show strength when I can. But I got a note from my substitute mail delivery person thanking me for the pride flags, because it helped her feel safer when out here covering someone else's route.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. One of the things that you said, Chris, reminds me of, this is, about 30 years ago. So I came out about 30 years ago, and this is going to make people want to Google maybe. But I remember, seeing people that I knew in community at, Target or McDonald's or wherever it was. And at that point in time, there was like this secret language of like, oh, do you know Harry Benjamin? So it's kind of like, do you know Bill W for folks that are in AA? And for folks that don't know Harry Benjamin, I'll go Google it, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more. But it was one of the ways that we could acknowledge each other and say, like, oh, I think I know you, and I think I know you in a trans context. And that would open the door to allow us to have a little chit chat in the middle of Target without anybody knowing anything if people weren't out. So I think sometimes we send messages through what we wear, if it's a hat or a shirt or some language that we might use that's kind of a code that allows people to stay safe or safer, but still acknowledge, each other for, being trans or queer or familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Caleb, what else are you thinking about when you think about like there's no right way to do Pride?
Well, I saw that we had a comment, and I was thinking about that too, about, somebody said, I'm scared to be visible in this small town I moved to, but I go to this open mic where I feel community and I get to share a lot and share space with trans youth too. And I just thought that was really cool because there are places and maybe a lot of the time where we don't feel safe, being publicly, open about our identities or wearing things that say trans on them or things like that. But to have that space, even just one place that's feels safer and a way to connect with folks, I feel like is so important. And I was just thinking about how that can be so small and informal too. And just your friends, your housemate, and I feel really lucky to live with somebody who is also trans and to have friends who are also trans where when we spend time together, it's just it's not, I don't know, there isn't that protective layer of worrying about how other people might be looking at us. Although sometimes when we're in public, that does come up. But when it's just us, there is that really beautiful sense of just belonging that I think I would hope that everybody can have in some small way. So I just love to see that even when we don't feel safe in our larger community, having that one small outlet, I feel is so important.
That's cool. Some of the stuff that I was thinking about before we did this was kind of how we can do some things that are kind of a one step removed, because we may know people in our community who really want to go to Pride. They're really excited about going, and we might not want to go. So what can we do for or with them? How can we support them going? And I was thinking about we could make them a bagged lunch if there's, if it's an outside venue that you can actually bring food into, or we could drive them so they don't have to pay for transportation, or we could have a decompression zone space. So Pride is really overwhelming for a lot of people, just a lot of noise, a lot of activity. But, we could say to them, hey, why don't you come to my apartment or my house or this park and we'll just sit and chill afterwards. We don't have to talk, but, we can just kind of chill out together, or you can tell me about it or whatever. So we could do those things as kind of ancillary to the people that do want to go to Pride.
And I love that idea of kind of offering options too, where it's I feel there's so much social momentum towards big events and really loud and vibrant celebrations, which is really cool. And a lot of people love that. But then having also somebody who you can kind of reflect quietly with and just hang out and maybe not even talk, but just kind of chill together, or cook together or something like that. Knowing that that's also an option and probably would be nice to have in addition to these kinds of more I want to say extroverted the options that we have too. So I love that idea of having kind of a relationships in places where we can also just have a more relaxing Pride experience.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris, you and I are going to see, I was going to say, you and I are going to be quiet. I'm going to be quieter now.
I even paused. I'm so sorry.
I did too.
No, that's one of the things I love about smaller events. Through smaller events, I've actually met people in my area, this rural area, that have a social group, and once a month or so they meet up just for a craft afternoon where they sit quietly and work on their own crafts. at the public library, which is great. It's a public show of pride. It's hanging out. It's a non-alcohol environment, which is, you know, something that often keeps people away from pride-focused events. So yeah, it's so good to see other options.
Yeah, I love that. And it, you know, when you talk about like, that's something that's totally not about pride. Like, it's not like the celebratory pride, and you're doing something that's not pride focused, but you're like just hanging together. So I mean, that's like a really cool option. Or if people want to be a little bit more pridey, you know, I've been finding it fascinating over the last like 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer than that, that like Netflix and Hulu and like social media outlets are like sharing like, hey, here's your pride playlist for music or for videos. And it's like, you can invite people over to your space if that feels comfortable, or, you know, watch together like in your own separate places and talk about it or text about it, or just, you know, just watch by yourself. So that gives some options of like, you know, I can still kind of feel in the pride zone, but I don't have to necessarily be with people, or I can be with the people that I like and I know and I trust. So those are fun to be in those gatherings together. Yeah.
Michael, that makes me, oh, sorry.
No, yeah, I was just going to ask another question to prompt us.
That makes me think too. I have a friend who I like throughout the pandemic, or the early stages of the pandemic, when we were living in different cities, we would do Netflix parties a lot of the time, or like Hulu parties. They have them for a lot of different streaming platforms, but we could watch a movie or a show together, like synced up at the same time, but from 2 different places, and like chat while we watched it. And it was a really nice kind of low pressure, like low social pressure kind of situation. Because sometimes being on a video call is a lot for me, or like being on a phone call. So just, I'm like laying in bed, not worrying about how I look, and watching a queer movie that we're both enjoying. So that might be an option for folks too, that, you know, you don't have to be in the same room with somebody to enjoy something together. And yeah, to take advantage of those pride specific kind of playlists and options.
Or watch something totally different. You know, it's like,
it doesn't have to be.
That's always an option. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've heard all of us kind of mention at some level is like the overwhelm of pride, or some things around disability or disability access. And I mean that in a really broad way. So about neurodiversity, as well as physical or mobility issues, or mental health issues or safety issues. I'm wondering if either of you want to add anything about kind of the, you know, there's no right way to doing pride, and how disability may play a role in what decisions are made. I'm not asking you personally, but like in general, what considerations might be at play?
Well, I know we had talked about this in another conversation, but having a quiet zone, more and more Pride Fests are doing that. I know in Milwaukee there's the lakefront, that it's not officially a quiet zone, but it tends to be a quieter space where you can go and deal with whatever sensory stuff you're coping with. That's huge. Making sure there are places to sit. You know, not everyone can stand or walk all day, or even for the 4 or 5 hours that they want to be at a festival. Things like that can just make the space a more welcoming and accessible space.
Yeah,
we love to see that.
Yeah. I wanted to bring in, there's a comment from earlier about my whole house is trans and my son is trans, and I have a lot to protect at home. My spouse is a more visible trans person. Yeah, and I can't remember what I was going to say about that, but yeah, I mean, I think that really comes back to the where we choose to be visible and where we don't, or like, do we have that option? Do we, is that something we just have to kind of navigate when we're with our community? And then what Christina was sharing reminded me too of like, there's a Pride event happening next weekend, I think, where I live, that I'm really excited about because the organizers have specifically said that masks are required. And that's one of those things that signals to me with my chronic health issues that I'm welcome to be there. And it doesn't address, all of like, am I going to have a place to sit? Or, there are a lot of other factors there, but it at least gives me this sense of like the people who are showing up, it may not be perfect, but are willing to like be inconvenienced in this way, in a pretty minor way, to keep their community safe from COVID, at least, and other airborne illnesses. And that is something I don't see at most Pride events, and can kind of deter me a little bit because I know that is going to be a higher risk situation with so many people. And somebody else shared in the chat about going to a drag show and getting COVID. So it's a real risk. And I'm like, I want for folks in my community to be safe and to not be sick on the short term or the long term. And that's one of those things that I'm like so excited to see Pride organizers do, that a like more traditional Pride event can be made safer by asking folks to take precautions. And then I think even especially those smaller, really community focused events that have, like I went to a book swap the other day, which was not Pride specific, but it was masked. And there ended up being a lot of sharing about, like, I shared some books that are trans themed, and I was so excited to see people take those and get something out of that. So I think it's a powerful signal to say, like, this is in place, it's required, it's not just recommended. And there's a certain level of safety when you come here.
And I know we brought up at the last one, we talked about like some of the Pride events that do have, like Christina, you mentioned like the kind of the segregated, that sounded bad. The spaces that were more designed for folks that have health issues or needing to decompress, and those spaces that are oftentimes masks required. And after that live, I went and was kind of looking up, and somebody had mentioned like the Trans Pride in Seattle had one of those areas. And I found it interesting that when I was looking, it seemed like more of the Trans Pride events had those safer for accessibility, disability, masking options than kind of the general queer Pride. And I don't know if that's true or just what I found. But I think that would be really interesting to kind of explore, of like, oh, are trans folks maybe thinking about this differently than the broader queer community is thinking about it? Do we try to protect each other maybe more? And I'm not trying to hierarchy our communities. It's interesting.
I don't know. I hadn't noticed that, but it makes me proud of us as a community. I mean, I already love us.
And that might be like, that I think some trans people think about their bodies and their wellness and their wholeness, maybe more than other people, maybe not, but, maybe there's some link to, how we think about our bodies, or not. I don't know, but I just think it's an interesting, that it may be true or maybe not true of that. So, are there more comments that you each have about disability and what some of those choices might be around what to do and how to recognize Pride, whether it's at an event or choosing to do something different?
I saw a video recently, this I guess isn't directly related, about somebody talking about using mobility aids and like compression socks, and when they went out to some event, and that instead of pushing themselves and having to recover a lot afterward. And I don't think it was Pride specific, but I thought that was a nice reminder of like, we can, when we have access to those things, we should use them. And that's something I struggle with too. Like I use hiking poles to like not put so much weight on one of my feet. And sometimes I'm like, oh, it's in the way, or like, I don't know if I want to bring it to this place, but having the option is really nice and a huge relief physically. So I don't know. I thought that was a really nice reminder of just like, we have to take care of our bodies, and that might not look glamorous all the time. And it might mean not doing all the things that we would love to do, but like that is a way to take care of ourselves and celebrate ourselves, is to like honor what's going on and like the amount that we have to rest and like do things from home too.
Yeah. That's great.
And it's okay to only do what we can do. There are days that I absolutely don't want to be seen, can't be seen. And it took me a long time to not beat myself up for that. Sometimes I just have to celebrate Pride from afar. You know, I love living vicariously through people in other cities and towns by watching their videos that they make at Pride, because it's such a good reminder that it's so much bigger than all of us individually or even collectively. It's beautiful, and with social media, it's more accessible than ever to be able to feel a part of something.
I know this was one of the first years that Forge was not at Pride, which was kind of startling or kind of jarring to me. And I didn't go as a person either. I didn't go as just an attendee because it's not my thing. I mean, I'm introverted. It doesn't do anything for me. But I loved looking at the photos. So I spent a lot of time on Instagram and Facebook looking at, you know, both my local Pride as well as some other Prides. And I spent probably several hours just like looking through photos. And I'm looking forward to like the San Francisco Trans Pride, which I don't think has happened yet. And I haven't looked for it, but like those are really fun. And it's like you feel like you're part of something, even if you're not in that same geographic area. And it's also a disability thing because it's like, you know, hey, I don't have to go get hot and feel really burnt out 10 minutes after I get there. So those are really some perks of being able to access online. Yeah. I'm wondering, Chris, you and I talked, or you were kind of given a suggestion earlier of something that you had mentioned that is a little snarky and a little bit fun, but do you want to talk about some of those other like kind of more subversive ways that Pride can be brought in?
Okay, I love being a little bit sneaky here and there. You know what, I just and one of the things I do throughout the year is I make cookies and decorate them for different charity events, and they get auctioned off, the royal icing stuff. And last year I decided that I was going to have the people in my little rural town bidding on a tray full of cookies in the trans Pride colors. and they did. There was a bidding war for my sugar cookies that were trans Pride. And I think about how doing stuff like that can spark pride in people when they just happen to walk by and see it on the table. Things like putting bookmarks or books in little free libraries. Sometimes people give me books that I either don't read or I've read, and they go in the little free libraries because you never know who's going to come across it. And
fantastic.
Yeah,
that is cool. Keep on going. I mean, that's
yeah. I mean, I'm super mindful. Not like if I grab bookmarks at Pride and stuff, people are giving them away by the handfuls. I'm careful not to put anything with anyone's logo or company name on it because we don't want to get anyone in trouble. We want to be mindful about what we place and how. So generic trans stickers or bookmarks, it's a great way to just like drop little pieces of Pride glitter here and there.
I was gonna say, Christina, I would not to advocate for people like putting stickers where you're not supposed to put stickers, but it can be a kind of cool way to like, whether it's on your own stuff or, you know, out somewhere, of like small little like affirming messages that people see in public, and that's really powerful and can feel subversive. And, you know, I was also thinking, it's been a long time, but I was doing these, I can't remember what they're called. They're like postal stickers, and they have kind of a big white space on them. And there's a thing with people, you would make art on that basically, and then use them as stickers that you could put around places. So it doesn't have to be the postal ones, but it could be a cool way to make something of your own and have both the like, maybe get together with people and draw like really simple drawings or color things, trans flag colors, or just write. I think the affirmations are really powerful, and like put those out in a way that other people can see.
That's really cool. I know one of the years at the Philly Trans Wellness Conference, one of the things that Forged did, it was not a planned thing. We didn't like pre-plan this, but a lot of people were feeling some toughness, some hard emotions. And we went around, all of us that were on staff, we had a whole bunch of folks there, and we did little post-it notes. Mm-hmm. And we did the, like, you're beautiful, and like just affirmations. And we put them on, you could remove them. We didn't vandalize anything, but we put them everywhere. And they were like little signs of love. And it was so freaking cool. Just to kind of like spread the love. Like, I don't know if I felt better or people that saw them felt better, but it was just like, wow, this is fun. This is good. It reminds people that they're valued and wonderful and good. And sometimes that's what people need. Yeah. Caleb, can you share some of what's coming in on the comments?
Yeah, we've gotten quite a few comments. So there's one, and this comes back to like kind of COVID and disability. Somebody said trans people were on the front lines of the AIDS crisis too. So I think there's some memory there. Yeah, absolutely. And then a couple others. So connecting with y'all, even in this parasocial way, has been really good for me in my isolation. I feel a little less alone. And I don't know about, you both, but I feel like we're in different rooms, but it feels really connecting just to chat with both of you and like to know that, and to chat with folks in the chat, even if it's a little indirect. And then this last positivity was, I love going to this open mic and having a room full of mostly cis people cheer for love and support of trans people, or having them charge trans power for me when I'm on the microphone. I love that.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. I was thinking too about around the time of George Floyd, people were like starting to put yard signs up around Black Lives Matter and, very specific social justice oriented yard signs. And, that kind of evolved into, I can't remember what some of the signs said, but like, and maybe Caleb or Christine, you can remind me, but they started to evolve into like including acceptance and celebratoriness of a whole bunch of different kinds of people, including queer and trans people. And, I know that like when I walk through my neighborhood, like I still see some of those, and that's really cool. Or one year somebody put out literally a basket of trans pride flags on their front porch. And it was kind of like, free, take one. And, like, I have no idea, right? If this was just somebody that was being an active, I don't know I don't know why they did it, but it was like, it was freaking cool. And it gave me a sense of not safety necessarily, but like, oh, that's really neat. I feel like people are seeing and knowing who trans folks are just by the fact that they have a basket of pride flags. So those are just, it may not have had anything to do with pride for them, but it was celebratory in some way.
Yeah. And that's like such a small thing that somebody can do, if you aren't able to go to these big pride events, or that's just not for you, like if you can put together something like that is public facing, like maybe it's just a flag for yourself that other folks can see, like Christina was talking about having the flags at their house, and like that makes such a big impact. I was also thinking about a few years ago, I saw somebody doing like rock art with like painting on rocks that would have pride messages and stuff and colors, and have those just like under trees out in my neighborhood. And like, how cool is that to see? It's just such a small, like positive reminder. And that's something that anybody can do.
That's really cool. And I think that sometimes we get really isolated. Like we don't always know what happens across the country. And, there's little rocks that are in my neighborhood too. And what a cool idea. If somebody paints them something trans pride or trans positive, and they're just stuck in a little nook of a tree, or I see a lot of them on fire hydrants or whatever. But that's cool. It's really cool. Are there other things that you'd like to bring up, either of you, about kind of the no right way to do Pride, or things that you think about?
I mean, well, Christina, do you have anything right now? Because I've got...
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I guess I just wanted to uplift, too, that, like, sometimes the social media piece can be really hard, too. Like, I do love seeing photos from Pride and, like, feeling more connected that way. And then other times I'm like, it's difficult to see, like, what other people are doing and, like, partying and celebrating that I'm not a part of. And to feel kind of like left behind in that. And there's also so much, like, we can see so much from our social media that, like, people across the world, like you said, which can be both really cool and, like, difficult sometimes. And I don't know if I have, like, there's no, like, easy solution for that, but I think it's an aspect of our world now, and, like, something to be mindful of as we're like, how do we feel in our bodies when we're, like, taking this in, and, like, what can we do to kind of reconnect and, like, find what we do have in our life, in our community.
That's really a good point, Caleb. And it reminds me of a blog post that you did a long time ago about doom scrolling. And it's not really doom scrolling when you're looking at, like, Pride stuff. But if that becomes painful, then it's not necessarily something that, is helping celebrate or bring joy. So, like, how do we check in with ourselves about, like, oh yeah, this went from feeling good to I'm feeling isolated now. So that's a really good point to bring up, that duality of it's wonderful and we need to take care of ourselves in those situations. Yeah. Christina, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I did not today just yet. I feel confident that I kind of made all the points that I came in wanting to make today, so I'm kind of proud of myself for that.
Woohoo.
Right?
I know, it's great. And I was looking at my list too, and I've got one more thing that I was going to bring up earlier. And one of the things that I was thinking about before we did this was that sometimes, we may not want to go to Pride. So this is kind of the no right way to do Pride. So this is not about being at home or doing something that's, this is about actually leaning in and going. But we might not go for ourselves. We might go because it's important to somebody else that really wants to go. So we might go for our friends. We might, like I mentioned earlier, we can, like, drive our friends. We can do something that helps enable those that do want to be there to be there. We can be the designated driver so that other people can drink and we don't drink if that's important to somebody. We can help safety plan with somebody about, like, how they can get the most out of Pride and have fun. And we can be their designated contact person if they want to leave at any point in time. Or I was thinking that we, folks that are more veterans and have done Pride a lot, we could bring someone who has never done Pride to a Pride event because they really want to go and they're really excited, but they're really scared. So we can say, oh, I'll show you around. I've been here. I've been to this park before. I've been to this place before. And I was also thinking that we could, like, run interference if people are worried about feeling unsafe or something. We could, like, not be the big strong person, but like be the interface so that they don't have to deal with some of the crap that sometimes happens. I was thinking about we could be bathroom buddies for people. Again, these are things that might be for people that are new to Pride or people that just feel uncomfortable with those things. And we can help people, like, affirm who and how and what they want to be for the day. So I know in one of our other Pride lives, we talked about, like, it's an opportunity to be curious and playful and experimental. So, like, hey, if somebody says, I want to wear this corset that I've had and I've only worn it at home, could you come and lace me up? It's like, yes, sure. And then we can go with them, or we could just help lace them up, and away we go. So I think sometimes we can do Pride in those ways where it's not for us, but we're kind of gifting that or being friendly to the people that we care about.
And I think about how something as simple as just being the person that someone can call if they find themselves overwhelmed at Pride, being someone's backup, could go a long way at helping them to feel safer.
You bet.
Letting somebody know. Oh.
No, go ahead, Gil.
Letting somebody know that, if you need to get picked up, I'm around, that it's like something simple like that, like, I'll come get you. Like, you'll have somebody to drive you and a place to go. It's just really powerful.
Yeah, that's great. I was just going to say I think there's another comment or two that have come in. Caleb, can you easily see those?
Yeah, I see. Did you all see the video of a dad who put a gay flag in the backpack of one of those hateful Christians with giant signs? I have not seen that. Now that's one way to do subversive activism.
Might be vandalism, but if it just kind of, drops in there, it's probably kind of okay. Yeah. I always encourage engaging safely with those protesters if you're going to engage at all. I was really kind of surprised this year that there were no protesters at Milwaukee Pride, either at the parade or at the festival grounds. And I hate to say I was almost
amazing
because I wanted my photo op.
And that's like another no right way to do Pride, right? It's like if you want to go and stand in front of the protesters and do selfies, that's one way to do Pride. I mean, that can be something that's really powerful. And, if you want to go to Pride and protest something, I mean, like right now, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world. And sometimes we can be political when we go to Pride, whether it's about Palestine or wherever or whatever is going on in the world. We can take that as an opportunity to help have conversations or messaging. Can't really have a lot of conversations at Pride sometimes, but we can choose that as an opportunity to do something else that's meaningful to us, even if Pride itself isn't something that motivates us.
I love that you say that, because I know my throat was sore for 3 days after protesting at the Pride Parade this year. Because I'm one of those people.
And that's cool, right? It's like you're one of those people, and some of the other people are just like, I'm not going to talk at all while I'm at Pride. Both are good. Both are great. Anything in between. Yeah.
And I was thinking too, like it's, you to be politically involved, you don't have to necessarily go shout at protesters and lose your voice. That's awesome and one way to do it. And I was thinking about, we have a couple of blog posts from last year on our Trans Survivors blog about just like other options. I think it's Pride every day. So like 30 things you could do during Pride Month, and some of them are really small and some require a little bit more like engagement. But I think some of those were around like signing petitions for trans related causes, or like sharing awareness posts on social media, and like donating if that's an option for you. And like there are ways to be involved and to make a difference that aren't necessarily putting your physical body in a place that might not feel safe or comfortable or accessible.
I was just thinking that one of our social media posts last week was reposting an article from Christina, was it about a year ago, about the intersection of queer or transness, and I don't remember what the person's identity was, and Juneteenth Day, and how those two things go together. So it's like, that's a way to celebrate Pride in a way too, is to bring up, hey, this is complex. This is not just about me being trans, but it's about these intersecting identities or these intersecting realities in my life, in our lives, or wherever.
Yeah, there are just so many ways beyond your typical Pride Month celebrations that we can do that. I know I'm super impressed that out where I live, there's a group of LGBT people I've mentioned the social club, they do art, but they're also going to be in this county's 4th of July parade, out, proud, reminding people that we are out here. No, I'm not going to be there because I don't do that day. I stay home, I close my blinds, and I don't. But I am so impressed that there are people out here in my community bonding together to celebrate Pride in a July 4th parade.
Yeah. That's freaking cool too.
Yeah.
We're at 45 minutes, which is a long time or a short time, depending on your perspective. Do either of you have any last things you want to share before we wrap up today? Like, I want to share that I'm a
Go ahead. I hope I'll see everyone on social media. Say hi to me in the comments. I can't wait to interact with all of y'all.
Yeah, I really appreciate this, and I would love to hear too. I know there are live comments, but then this will also be posted later, and I would kind of love to hear if other folks have ideas and like what you do for Pride that might not be going to a Pride event necessarily, but like what are those things that you do for yourself and things you do in your community that are forms of celebration.
And Caleb, you said exactly what I was going to say, which is like, we'd love to hear from you about what you all do. And I think that helps all of us get ideas and help us feel a little bit less alone if we celebrate or if we mark Pride in some different ways than are not always talked about. So yeah, post some comments. And we will be back next week, and we're going to be talking about building pride in community, I think is our topic. Or pride in community. So building pride in community. So kind of going beyond the month of June and what and how we can integrate pride or move forward throughout the year. So I hope you join us next week, same time, same place. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks everyone.